Welcome to episode 11 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. If you're new to the show, we would really appreciate it if you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and of course, ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. And on top of that, give us a 5-star rating and review no matter where you are listening to this podcast. So, the Toronto Maple Leafs finally won a hockey game, everybody. Just when we thought they were going to finish the season without winning a game and everything was going to come crashing down and the 18-wheeler was ready to fall off the cliff, they finally ended it and beat the Calgary Flames on Saturday night. So we are going to get into the week that was and give you our thoughts and opinions on everything that went down with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But before we do that, it is time to welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How are you doing, man?
I'm solid, man. Here in Ottawa, the sun is out. We got like plus 10 weather, which feels like absolute craziness. The snow is pretty much all gone. I got the annual glorious moment of the snow melting on the deck in my backyard to uncover all the dog shit that Apollo has left behind.
Uh-oh.
And there's no better moment in a man's life than getting out the trash bags and cleaning up all the dog poop that has accumulated over months and months of an Ottawa winter. So very happy. Leafs win. Sun is out. Recording a pod. Can't complain, bro.
You got to love it, Lepore. You got to love it. Even if the Leafs let us down over the past 6 or 7 games, it seems like things are finally coming back to normal. So why don't we go over the week that was, Lepore? Only 2 games this past week. So they came into action on Friday night against the Calgary Flames, going 1-5-0 over their last 6 games. And they faced a Calgary Flames team that had been playing pretty well under Daryl Sutter, but they were coming off a disastrous 7-3 loss to the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
And Frederik Andersen was not good in this game, Lepore. I mean, it got off to a bad start. Matthew Tkachuk takes a shot from a bad angle. It deflects in off Travis Dermott. And from that moment, you just knew the Leafs were in trouble. And then John Tavares, with a bad turnover into the middle of the ice, leads to the next Flames goal. And then Chris Tanev with a long wrist shot from the point on the third goal for the Calgary Flames. And then the winning goal from Mark Giordano, I think went off Jake Muzzin's ass, if I saw correctly, and past Frederik Andersen. So, I mean, it was just an ugly night in goal for Andersen. The Leafs outshot the Flames 27-18. They had the majority of the scoring chances. They controlled the play most of the game. Deserved to win the game, honestly, if you look at any metric. But the goaltending let down the Leafs, and Andersen, he just hasn't been good this year. He has now allowed 22 goals over his last 6 games for an .862 save percentage, and his save percentage on the season is now at .897. But Michael Lepore, the Leafs, did not have any time to think about that, because the very next night on Saturday, they returned to action against the same Calgary Flames, and Jack Campbell, who hadn't played a game since February 27th due to injury, makes his triumphant return to the lineup and shuts out the Calgary Flames, making 31 saves for his second straight shutout. Just what the Leafs needed. And then after the game, Lepore, I don't know if you caught this on Twitter, but Sheldon Keefe actually said that Andersen has been dealing with a lower body injury, and that's why he actually didn't serve as the backup on Saturday night. Michael Hutchinson served as the backup. But Jack Campbell giving the Leafs exactly what they needed. Jason Spezza and Zach Hyman scoring the 2 goals. So that was great to see, as well as the Leafs, kind of put an end to all the fears that a lot of fans had over the last little while, that this team, guess what? They're still playing well. This, even though the results weren't there, all they really needed was a good goaltending performance, and they finally turned the ship around. So, Lepore, give me your thoughts on what you saw from the Leafs this week.
Well, let's start with that 4-3 loss. It was almost as if a volcano erupted. Like, there were some questions on Freddie going into the season based on his last couple of years compared to the first 2 years he had with the Leafs, where people were very happy with his performances. And the rumblings on Twitter and with Leafs fans and with Leafs media was really starting to freak out with regard to how he was playing and with all the good that's going on with this team. When you're not getting goaltending, it's one of those things where, well, nothing else matters. You can have the best offense in the league, a solid defensive core, but if you're not getting saves, it's all bullshit. You're going to lose. And all this discussion was happening, like I said, and then you have that game where Freddie fucking sucked, man. Like, the shots from distance beating him. It looked like he had good looks. Like you said, it couldn't have got off to a worse start, and then he got beat twice. If I remember correctly, the Flames have 2 goals on their first 3 shots. I think the shot count at one point.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it was set. Yeah, 3 goals. They had 3 goals on 7 shots.
There you go.
At one point, and the high danger scoring chances. This was hilarious. Again, like, it's almost as if Leafland knew what we were dealing with as a fan base, so they had to punch us in the face. The high danger scoring chances at one point were 8-0 for Toronto, and it was 3-2 Flames.
Unbelievable.
Like, how more frustrating can this be? And the Leafs fought back. Like, that was like the biggest kick in the nuts, in the way that it was a messy game to start with. I mean, Spezza got that kind of weird goal, and then Kerfoot's goal was another weird one that I guess Markstrom didn't see. Marner snipes in the second period to tie the game. And just when you thought, okay, we're rolling now, come back, whatever, Freddie gets beat again on that power play shot from Giordano, like right off the faceoff. And that one, I think, may have been the worst one. That one, again, did you say it may have got tipped? You thought it got deflected?
I think that's the one that went off Muzzin's ass.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it did. Like, when you look at the replay, it looks like it brushed off Muzzin for sure.
Yeah, and it just like so frustrating. And whatever, like, he saw it. Like, he had the lane. It wasn't even as if there was a screen and it went off Muzzin's ass. He saw it. He's got to stop it. And then just to add to the frustration, you have that crazy save that Markstrom makes on that dive across the net on the Matthews shot. And then you have that other chance from Matthews in close where he hits the post. Just a frustrating game all around for Leafs fans. And like I said, it was like a volcano was erupting in the way that, like, fuck, man, we have to do something about this in a hurry and things have to change. And moving to that second game, there was the optimism that Campbell was coming in. But again, like, that's not a good sign in the way that, okay, we're excited to see our backup goalie. And he has been good for us, and he's a likable guy. We've all talked about that. But, like, you look around this division, I don't think this is getting talked about enough. Like, people are comparing the divisions, of course. Like, okay, so Calgary's got Markstrom. Okay. Vancouver's got Demko, who people are saying might get nominated for the Vezina. Winnipeg's got Hellebuck. Smith in Edmonton is playing well. Price is not having his best season, obviously, but he still carry Price.
Yeah, and he hasn't been as bad as Andersen, as much as people
not even
shitting
close
on Price this season.
So it's that whole thing of, like, here we've been, like, pumping this team's tires, talking about how they're the deepest team, they can score, they've improved defensively. But if someone looked me in the face and said that Toronto's got the worst goaltending in this division, I mean, maybe minus Ottawa, I'd be like, okay, like, would I be able to make a strong argument against them? Like, we're banking on Campbell right now. And there are the rumors, and I'll ask you, because there was an interview Andersen did about a week ago where it could have, if you read between the lines, he was kind of saying that he was hurt. He said he was dealing with some things and he's got to play through it or get through it. And again, maybe we just overthought the quote. But do you think he could be playing hurt? Or is it just kind of one of those things where, okay, he's not, and we're kind of hoping he's hurt, or get over it? A lot of guys are playing hurt. You still got to be better.
If he is injured, I can't imagine it's anything serious.
Right.
Because, I mean, just watching him play, it doesn't look like he's, struggling to do anything in the net. And I'm not like a goaltending expert or anything like that. But, man, if you're a goalie and you're dealing with, I don't know, a groin injury or any sort of lower body injury, wouldn't you just be out of the lineup?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you be listed as day-to-day or be put on IR? at this
you
point.
can't
Like,
play.
if you're
You can't play
struggling
with
that
a bad
badly-
hip or bad. You can't play with a bad hip or a bad groin.
Yeah,
Like you're
like
done.
he's been playing all these games.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to hear excuses from Freddie Andersen. And listen, maybe it might come out, a few days from now, a week from now, after the season, that he was dealing with something worse than we ever realized. But based
or
on the amount,
personal. Or it came up personal. It popped in my head. Like there's just something we don't know as a fan.
Yep,
Like
and
family
that's-
stuff. Like who knows? Yeah.
that's definitely possible too. He could be dealing with a personal situation, a family situation, who knows? But this dude's played 23 games this season and he's looked fine. And I know Sheldon Keefe came out after Saturday night's game and said that the reason Andersen didn't serve as the backup to Jack Campbell is because he's dealing with a lower body injury. So I'm sure we are going to start to find out a little bit more information. But at this point, Lepore, I mean, it's like I said, if you're injured, just stay out of the lineup. And this dude's been playing consistently, and he's been playing consistently bad for the last little while. So I don't know. I mean, listen, Freddie Andersen's now been here for 4+ seasons. This is his 5th year, and he's been pretty solid for the most part. But I can't be making excuses for him at this point. I don't know about you, but
No,
I said this on a previous show. He's been progressively getting worse and worse every year as a Leaf, basically. And right now, he's having the worst season of his NHL career.
Yeah.
So, another thing that we talked about on a previous show, this team can't just sit around and wait for Freddie Andersen to play well. If Jack Campbell's the best goalie, and right now he looks like he's the best goalie, then this is going to be Jack Campbell's net for the foreseeable future. End of story.
Yeah. And like again to Jack Campbell, should go over that second game. The games were pretty much the same in the way of like the underlying metrics. It was just, to sound cliche again, Campbell made the saves, right? Like the Leafs had the pressure. And I've said before on the show how I'll turn to moneypuck.com for that deserve a win a meter thing that, uses all the underlying metrics to say who should have won a game. And both games are around 80% for the Leafs.
Wow.
And one you win 2-0 and one you lose 4-3. And it wasn't even as if Campbell stole the game or played incredible. He had good rebound control. He was able to punch the pucks to the side. There were 3 saves I circled. Like he made one off a turnover in the second period. There was one that was sort of a weird directional change in the third, which a guy came in a
that
one-on-one.
deflection. That's
yeah,
right.
that weird.
I forgot
deflection.
who took that shot, but
yeah,
made that quick deflection. He had to make that blocker save, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and then there was that sliding. We call them the Bill Ranford save.
Yeah,
Bill Ranford saves that he made a little later. But I mean, you look at his numbers. And I mean, that's small sample sizes, and they're going to adjust. But he's 4-0 with 2 shutouts and a .965 save percentage.
Incredible.
Like you said, how do you have to give him the net? That's it. Like we can't wait around, and it's always fun in Leafland. It's always interesting, and it's never calm. So, and to be honest, it has been kind of calm with regard to the goaltending situation for a few years. So, like, bring it on. Like it's made the hockey gods are making up for lost time for Leafs fans, because these next few weeks of Campbell, if he plays well, is Andersen hurt? And then the thing of, okay, well, what do we do with Andersen? Like there will be people saying if he's not playing, we should try to trade him. So that'll be a whole bag of worms. And again, that's a whole other debate. Maybe we can touch on that, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see what happens. And I don't know, I'm looking forward to it, but the big part of me is not looking forward to it, because I have that fear in me that this could end badly. Because like I said, nothing else matters if you're not getting goaltending.
And you know what, Lepore, you brought up a good point, how it's been a while, honestly, since the Leafs have had do we even want to call this I guess we can officially call this a goaltending controversy, even though a lot of people, even though a lot of people, including myself, think that Jack Campbell right now is the best goalie. So you just got to roll with him. Okay, but it's been a while, man, since, the Leafs have had a situation like this where the guy who's supposed to be their number one is just not playing well. Because you go back over the last, 20 years, right? It was only really solidified when the Leafs had like Curtis Joseph and then Ed Belfour. Yeah. And then there was a stretch of like over 10 years where it's like their goaltending just sucked.
These guys. It's funny. I was at the, speaking of Andersen and like, fears of goalies in Toronto, I was at the opening night Matthews' first game, the 4-goal game.
Mm-hmm.
And because of what Matthews pulled off, I guess it didn't get the attention, but Freddie was shit in that game.
Yeah.
Fucking shit. And I remember thinking, like, during this game, we have this guy for the next 5 years at $5 million. Because when we signed him, it kind of came out of nowhere. And there's that typical Freddie thing that he has slow starts and then his numbers adjusted as the season went on. But I remember just like face palm, like watching that game, like we fucking gave this guy $25 million, but it hasn't been all bad. So
yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like for the first 3 years, if you look at his regular season numbers, like they're really good. He was around like a 917, 918 save percentage. And I know that he struggled in the playoffs, especially in those Bruins series. You know, he had some really ugly performances. And then even going back to last season against Columbus, where he had like a 934 save percentage in that series. But again, everyone remembers, you know, those soft goals that he let in against Columbus at the wrong time. And you brought up another really good point about Jack Campbell in the Saturday night game against the Flames, Lepore. It's not like he did anything spectacular. Like he made, let's say, 3 like really good saves, right? That you would expect, you know, your bona fide number one starter to make. But it's not like, you know, he saved the game for the Leafs.
Yeah.
The Leafs had total control of the game, pretty much like they had for a lot of the games that they lost over the last 7 or 8. And Jack Campbell just made the save when the Leafs needed him to make a save. It was really as simple as that. And that's not what they were getting from Freddie Andersen. And it's been so frustrating for Leaf fans because you watch these games, Lepore, and I'm going back to after the Leafs sweep the Edmonton Oilers, they outscore them 13-1 over 3 games. Over the next 8, including the Jack Campbell shutout on Saturday night, the Leafs are 2-6. But you look at those 8 games, Lepore, and the Leafs have controlled the play in most of those games.
Oh, yeah.
If they get even decent goaltending, like their goaltending, they were getting like a 950, 960 save percentage over that stretch. Like that's just unacceptable. That's really, really bad. If they get just average, middle of the road goaltending, they probably have a 500 record, if not better, over that stretch. So what's your whole take on kind of what we've seen from the Leafs since that Oilers sweep? And I know a lot of Leaf fans have pressed the panic button, but I think the ones that are kind of zooming out and looking at the big picture understand that the main issue has been the goaltending. So what's your take on just how the Leafs have looked over this rut they've been in over the last 7 or 8 games?
Yeah. So just comparatively, so in the Leafs' first 24 games, it's kind of funny to see this record. They were 18-4-2. And then of course in that 7-game stretch, they were 1-6. Their goals per game. So now we're going to the other side of the rink. They were 3.63 goals per game. And then during the 1-6 streak, they were 2.57 goals scored per game. Their goals against went from 2.33 in their first 24 games to 3.86. Okay, that's a pretty big fucking jump there, man. Yeah, and then this is a big one, and we all knew this was going to adjust. The power play in the first 24 games was 32.5%. And then in that 7-game stretch, it was 7.7. But again, so when I look at that, yes, everything fell. So it can give you that feeling inside of you that the sky is falling, that this team was a fraud. But you look at the save percentage. The save percentage in those first 24 games for the Leafs, again, they went 18-4-2. Their goalies were putting up a 9.18, which is dead on the nose league average. So this team was winning games at a historical rate with average goaltending. Like we see quite often, teams will go on these crazy runs and you look at it and it's like, oh, their goalies are at a 9.45 save percentage. That's going to adjust. And this team's going to lose 10 in a row at some point. It's all going to even out. But the save percentage during those that 7-game stretch of the 1-6 was 8.58.
That's just brutal.
That's just fucking brutal.
That's like falling off a cliff.
Yeah, like that's not NHL. You could give me my AHL backup goalie, and I expect better than 8.58 goaltending. So when I look at that, when I look at those first 24 games and those numbers compared to that 7-game stretch, what I see, and trying to be as broad as possible and look at everything, I see, things came down to reality a bit for the Leafs. their power play wasn't going to go at a 35% clip the entire year.
Yeah, there's no way.
We knew that. We knew that, yeah, even their goals altogether were going to slightly drop. But that save percentage, again, they didn't have an incredible save percentage during those 24 games. So if they just would have had average goaltending during that 7-game stretch, it's 7 games. They go 1-6. Maybe they go 3-3-1. Even if they go 3-4, or who knows, maybe they put up a winning record because they're getting to overtimes, like bullshit like that. But we all knew everything was going to adjust. To me, it was just a combination of everything adjusting hard, as well as getting fucking trash goaltending. And then, yeah, what chance do you have? Like that game I said, 4-3. How is it possible that, it's not possible to be allowing the goals that they were allowing in that game, minimizing the Flames as much as they were? It's impossible to win. Like you just can't. Like, again, nothing else matters. And that's where I have that lingering fear in me of whatever we do, whatever we have, whatever we pick up at the deadline, there is that worry in me that there's a lot of question marks around the goaltending, and it doesn't fucking matter how good the rest of this team is if that is below average.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Anyone who's been watching this team closely this season, they've been pretty consistent, honestly, with the way that they've been able to generate offense. And I know there's been some really frustrating moments, and we can look at even Matthews specifically, where he's hitting all these posts and
last night was
stoning him. Like, it's frustrating to see things like that when, some of their best players are getting these point blank opportunities and they're not able to finish. But for the most part, just in terms of the way they've been able to generate offense, it's been there all season long.
Yeah.
And even though the goals maybe haven't been there at times, the way that they're controlling play and the shot share from game to game, for the most part, it's been in the Leafs' favor. And you hit a really good point, how everything just crashed down so hard. Like, it wasn't this, slow regression to the mean. We all knew the Leafs were not going to play at a 130-point pace. Like, that's like top 5 regular season team in the history of the NHL playing at a 130-point pace. We knew that was going to come down, but the way that it came down so harsh, it was basically like the 18-wheeler falling off the cliff.
Yeah, but with a good team, not a really bad team that was going the other way. Yeah,
you had a good team that was generating all these scoring chances, controlling most of the play. And you ask any of the fans on any of these Canadian teams that the Leafs played over that stretch, and they would say, you know what? The Leafs were the better team. And the one thing that was holding this team back was the goaltending. And it's like you said, when you're getting an 850, an 860 save percentage, I could ask my never mind AHL, I could ask my ECHL goalie to give me a save percentage like that. And it was just so frustrating because you could even see it on the bench too, right? And you see Matthews like breaking his stick in frustration and guys just kind of looking up to the sky. And you hear the quotes after the game. Like, I remember Zach Hyman had a quote where he's like, like, everything's fine. Like, we're playing well. We just got to get back to it the next game. And it was so cliche. You would hear all these cliche quotes game after game. But the thing is, that's actually what was happening. They were playing well for the most part, but the results just weren't there.
Well, Spezza said it. Spezza came forward and said it just seems like every time we give up something, their team scores. Like, every time. And you mentioned the scoring chances. I have an actual stat for that. Like, listen to this. Like, this is actually impossible. In that 7-game stretch of going 1-6, the Leafs possessed a 63% share of scoring chances. And that ranked during that span, that ranks second in the NHL. But that 858 save percentage was 29th in the NHL. There you go.
And there it is.
That sums it up. 63% of the scoring chances, second best in the league. But you're in the basement in save percentage. That's all you have to say.
There's nothing any team can do. And there's a team specifically that this reminds me of. I believe it was a couple of years ago, the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah.
They were one of the best teams in the league in terms of all the offensive metrics, their ability to score. But Martin Jones, and listen, Martin Jones, even to this day, has not been very good over the last, 2-3 years. He's been very below average, but there was a season where the Sharks, they were a playoff team, one of the best offensive teams, and they were getting the worst goaltending in the NHL.
Yeah. Wasn't he really good the year before too?
Yeah, he had a stretch where he was like really good for like 2 or 3 seasons, and then he just like fell off a cliff. Martin Jones.
Remember that, yeah.
But those Sharks teams, like they were loaded with talent, and you watch them and you're like, how is this team not better than their record? And then you look at their goaltending, and you're like, oh my dear God, they have the worst team save percentage in the NHL. And I'm not saying that the Leafs have the worst goaltending in the NHL, but just looking at that small 7-game sample size, it was really, really bad. Like you just said, Lepore, it was like the 29th best save percentage in the league. So I don't care if you're the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't care if you're the Vegas Golden Knights, the Colorado Avalanche. If you're getting goaltending like that, you're just not going to win games. It's really as simple as that. And I guess, Lepore, we can get into this conversation about Freddie Andersen and his contract. So as we all know, he's in the final season of a 5-year deal, making $5 million a year. He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season. As we all know, also, the Leafs do not have a lot of salary cap space. They have to re-sign Zach Hyman, who's going to get a raise from his $2.25 million contract.
Slight.
And then we have Jason Spezza, who makes $700,000. Lepore, he's playing less than 10.5 minutes per game, and he has 18 points in 31 games this season.
He's third. But I saw a stat yesterday. He is third on the Leafs behind Matthews and Marner in 5-on-5 points.
He's been incredible. I mean,
incredible.
You could argue that he has provided the most value.
That's not even an argument. That's not even an argument.
Of really any player in the NHL. Like it's been incredible to watch him this season. So
it's funny. Give me a second with Spezza. Think of this one, Bruno. This just made me feel happy for now, but sad for the past. It's like the whole reason of why we brought in, Jason Spezza and Joe Thornton. And Leafs fans are going to want to hear this or be reminded of this, but it's kind of the same reason why we brought in Patrick Marleau. And you think about what we were paying Patrick Marleau and the contract that was given to Patrick Marleau.
Oh, it was a disaster.
And again, Matt, I don't know, like the first couple of years were okay.
Yeah, the first year was good.
Yeah, but just looking at the production you're getting from Spezza at $700,000, what was Marleau making? 5.5?
I think he was making 6.
Was it a full 6? And we had to trade away a first-round pick for someone to take him. Like, yeah, no. And like compliments to Spezza all around. Like, absolutely crazy. We're so grateful to have Spezza in the lineup.
Oh, it's incredible. So you would think that based on the season he's having right now, he's going to want a little bit of a raise. And I know he's, 36, 37 years old, but he's going to want to jack up that $700K to maybe $1 million, $1.4 million. Who knows, right? And maybe he takes a hometown discount, but I think that's a guy that all Leaf fans would like to see come back next season. So then when you think about this Andersen situation, what's going to happen, Lepore? Because you also brought up a good point saying like, should we be that confident in Jack Campbell? Like this guy has never been a full-time starter in the NHL, and he's had really good moments with the LA Kings. He's been really good as a Toronto Maple Leafs, but he has never proven that he can be a game in and game out #1 starter in the league. And then you have Freddie Andersen, who's sitting here having the worst season of his career. He's about to become a UFA. Lepore, what do the Leafs do? Do they trade him before the deadline here? Do they hang on to him? What's your take on that?
That's loaded. Like, I think that has to be determined on what's available by way of trade. And of course, it's easy to say that. But when I say what's available, I say, what are teams willing to do? What do teams have? Because it's pretty tempting to be able to dump Freddie and free up that $5 million. Because then who knows what you can do in that deal or what you can do in another deal, bring in to create depth. I wouldn't want to get rid of Freddie and have no safety net for Campbell. I mean, not in the way of like the playoffs, like have someone come in for Campbell in the playoffs, but even to give Campbell rest. And because let's face it, like we're not going to rely on Hutch.
No, there's no way.
It is tempting. I mean, at the end of the day, and this sounds like horrid, but Andersen being really injured would make the decision a lot easier and cleaner because then you just have to do it. And if a team, whatever team you're making the deal with, they're not getting Andersen to get wins. It's just part of the deal. So what do they care if he's hurt type thing? So, I mean, we don't know if he's hurt. We don't know what teams would be willing to do, but I'll say it, man. Like we've talked about how this year is different, both in the way of like what we think this team is and the runway this team has playing in this division. If there's a taker for Fred and we can get a backup somewhere, like a real backup, I don't see how you can't do it. Like, to me, it's pretty black and white. Like, to have your goaltending, like Campbell makes what, 1.65, and then even going into next year, he has another year left. So even if you're planning, okay, you will give him another year, and then who knows what you'll do with the goaltending situation. But to free up that money, and if it allows you to keep Hyman, I mean, to me, that's a slam dunk either way. Like, it's like he's not re-signing. Like, is there a 1% chance Frederik Andersen's back with Toronto next year?
No, honestly, I think it's 0.
Yeah, like the only thing I could think would be, the climate's been weird with COVID and the cap not going up. If he signs like a 1-year deal.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I could see that happening if it's a 1 year.
1 year at a discount. Like, that's the only thing I could really see. And like I always say, there's all it takes is one stupid team to give him like 3 times whatever, and then he's got to go. So I don't know. I think we're done here, Bruno. Like, I think we're done here. Yeah. And in the way of like, we've seen enough. Like, I can't see it. Like, I can't see Frederik Andersen. It's like, what you know. And I can't see Frederik Andersen based on the last couple seasons and what we've seen so far, injured or not. Like, it doesn't matter. He's not going to like lead this team on a run. Like, I would have said before that Frederik Andersen's in that category of goalies in that middle to middle high group who's good enough to win you a cup, in the way that, like, kind of what we've touched on, the way that he's not going to cost you games and blow it. Like, he's good. And maybe if he does have to steal one game, maybe you get one out of him, because he did have some performances against Boston where he stood on his head and won games we weren't supposed to win. And then things just fell apart for him in the game 7s. But I think we're done here. So, and it's kind of like I almost think we're being told what to do, in the way that we're being told Campbell's the starter. And I don't think another team is just going to give us or have available a goalie who we can fully rely on. I mean, if you have a goalie who you can fully rely on, you're probably not in the situation of you're selling at the deadline. And people have brought up names. Like, I roll my eyes. Like, I heard somebody today bring up like Bernier.
Oh,
like,
come on.
Yeah, like let's get Bernier. Someone even brought up like Jonathan Quick. I'm like, guys, like, do you look at the cap? Like, do you like actually like step back and evaluate situations? Like, yeah, we're gonna roll the dice on Jonathan Bernier. Like, maybe as a backup next year, maybe, but it's just the whole thing. But where does your confidence lie with? I guess it's twofold, with Freddie and with Campbell.
Yeah. So right now, I think it's clear as day. You have to just continue rolling with Campbell, and I don't even think it's the fact that he has back-to-back shutouts. Like, let's say he lets in 1 goal yesterday and it ends 2-1. Like, I still think you're rolling with Jack Campbell for the foreseeable future. I mean, this guy basically played 1 game in 2 months and comes back and gets a shutout.
Yeah.
And he's looked really good. And again, I'm not a goaltending expert. Okay. I've never played goalie ever really in my life. Okay. I've played a lot of hockey in my life, but I've never played the goalie position, and I'm not saying that I'm an expert on it, but just watching him in the net, he looks very comfortable. He looks very confident. He looks very athletic.
Yes.
He looks like he's playing the best hockey of his career right now. And I think the Leafs have to roll with him moving forward. And you brought it up. He has 1 year left on his contract after this season at $1.65 million, which is an incredible discount. And I think the Leafs are looking at this situation with this expiring Freddie deal. And, they're looking at Zach Hyman, because guess what? Zach Hyman is getting a nice hefty raise here, everybody. He's making $2.25 million. The Leafs are going to have to pay him. And I think Leafs Nation would love to see this team re-sign Zach Hyman long-term.
It would fucking suck to lose Hyman.
That would be a huge blow.
That's a kick in the nuts. Yeah.
Because we all know how important the big four are. Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander. We all know that. They're the high skill guys on this team. They're the guys who are going to score all the goals and generate all the offense. But Zach Hyman, I mean, he's a part of this core as far as I'm concerned, Lepore. And I remember tweeting about this last year where, everyone is always bringing up trade rumors and who should the Leafs get rid of? Should they trade Nylander? And I sent out this.
Someone brought up trading Nylander.
Oh yeah, I wonder who brought up trading Nylander other than literally like 99% of the hockey population.
I'm waiting for it at the deadline. They'll be one of the Leafs should trade Nylander at the deadline.
Yeah, I can't. You know it's coming. There's going to be that the Leafs should look at trading Nylander article.
Yeah, to get that backup goalie we really need.
Oh God, it just drives me nuts. But I included Zach Hyman in that core. I said he should be an untouchable on this team. And you might call me crazy, but this guy has grown on me year after year. And just the way that he's able to seamlessly fit into any spot in this lineup. He can play on the top line with Matthews and Marner. He can play on the second line with Tavares and Nylander. He can play on the third line like we've seen him do recently. And Sheldon Keefe, I saw a quote on Twitter after the game. He said that he loves having Hyman on the third line because of what it does for the depth of the team. Like, we all know that Hyman could easily play on the top line with Matthews and Marner. But when you have him playing a little bit down the lineup and you're getting energy like that, and there's times, Lepore, where he's out there and he's just generating things himself.
Yeah.
He's driving to the net. He's digging pucks out of the corner. He's just making things happen. He is the heartbeat, one of the main heartbeats of this team. And I don't think any Leafs fan can deny that at this point. So this just kind of leads back to this whole conversation
of Campbell and
Campbell and Freddie Andersen. So we get it. The Leafs are going to have to pay Zach Hyman. So I think there's no way Freddie Andersen comes back next season. Now, can he come back on a 1-year deal at a discount like you said? And I even look at like Tyson Barrie in Edmonton, how everyone thought, including me, I thought he was going to get this big long-term contract. He signs for 1 year at $4 million with Edmonton. And now we're seeing him rebuild his value. He's leading all defensemen in scoring, running that Oilers power play. So maybe Freddie Andersen comes back, Lepore, on a 1-year deal because of the cap situation with COVID and all that. But they got to free up that cap space. And I don't think he's coming back. Now, in terms of this season, do I think they should trade him? That gets a little bit dicey for me because do I trust Jack Campbell? Yeah, I do. I think he's a really quality NHL goalie. Do I think Jack Campbell is going to continue putting up a .965 save percentage? No, there's no way in hell he's going to continue that. And am I confident in Michael Hutchinson as the backup goalie behind Jack Campbell? Hell no. So when you look at all that, I think the Leafs just ride it out with Freddie Andersen this season because I think they realize how good they are and the opportunity at hand, being in the Canadian division, playing a Canadian team in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. They will be the favorite to get through to the Final Four. And I think they just want to protect themselves here. And I think they're just going to kind of ride it out. And, if Jack Campbell ends up being the starter from now until the end of the season and into the playoffs, so be it. But it would be nice to have Freddie Andersen as the backup just in case. And Lepore, I don't think he's going to be this bad all season. I mean, who knows? Maybe he does finish the season with a sub 900 save percentage and he ends up having the worst season of his career. But I think even Freddie's play at some point has to get a little bit better here. I think we're going to see maybe a little bit of positive regression. So honestly, man, I think they maybe just ride this out with Freddie and Campbell for the rest of the season.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe when he does get, now we're going all over the place, but maybe if he does get that chance again, whether it's in a backup role or, Campbell hitting a cold streak, maybe he's motivated, like something slaps him in the face. Like, who knows? Like, now we're just bringing up hypotheticals and hoping. But again, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fucking blast to see what happens with the Leafs. And there's going to be a lot of takes, going to be a lot of stories, a lot to read. And I'm sure we'll be circling it back in for years to come on the decisions the Leafs made with regard to their goaltending situation in 2021.
Oh, yeah. It's about to get really, really spicy, Leaf fans, when it comes to this goaltending situation. But Lepore, let's move on and have a little bit of a chat about the Calgary Flames.
Yeah.
Who we just watched this week. 2 games against the Leafs, obviously. Daryl Sutter behind the bench. And personally, Lepore, I really don't think this coaching change for the Flames is going to make a difference. And I believe they're 4-2 now under Daryl Sutter. And we caught a lot of heat for saying that the Sutter hiring was just not a good hire, and that it was just Brad Treliving taking the easy way out, hiring a coach who had a good relationship with ownership, who's had success in the past, winning Stanley Cups, who used to coach and be the general manager of the Calgary Flames. But when I look at this team and I look at this roster and I break down these 2 games against the Leafs, at any point, Lepore, were you impressed with this team's ability to generate offense? Like, do you have any faith in this team moving forward the way that it's currently constructed with the players they have?
I mean, like, faith how? Like, in the way that this team being built?
Like, do you think this team, like, based on, okay, so they got Gaudreau, Monahan, Tkachuk, Lindholm. Like, do you think that core group of players, I mean, I guess we could add in Giordano and Hannafin and Markstrom. Like, is this a team that you think could be a serious contender at some point under Daryl Sutter?
No, I mean, that's not like that. I don't even think that's a hot take. Like, I think even the biggest Flames fan in the world would say they have to make moves. But it's so weird, like with their core, because it was a couple of years ago that they had the 3 young kids locked up, and meaning Monahan, Gaudreau, and Tkachuk, and they had insane seasons. And you looked at the deals that those guys signed, and they were A+ deals based on their production. But it's almost as if collectively all 3 of those guys have dropped. No, it's not to say they're bad players. They're still good players. But at the time, it was like, man, everyone should be afraid of the Calgary Flames. And yeah, Giordano with the Norris Trophy and all that. Did he win, or was he was a nominee?
Yeah, no, he won.
He won. Yeah, I was going to say he won. So it was like, yeah, man, Calgary's got a lot going for them. But even like over these 2 games, like guys like Monahan, like, did you even notice Monahan?
No,
it's weird. Like I know, and to your point with Sutter, like it's like cliche in the way they're hitting a lot. Like I noticed the hitting numbers were like absolutely crazy in favor of Calgary, and I guess that's how he sees the team, and that's how they're gonna win. They're gonna will you, like, you know, will beats skill. But it's like I think they stand where a lot of teams stand in the NHL, in the way that they have a nice group of players, and it's just a matter of filling holes. I mean, because even too, like minus the Lucic contract, and he's funny because he actually had a pretty decent year. Do they really have any bad deals? And when I say that, I'm complimenting the Flames in the way that they have some nice pieces, so they can probably get good in a hurry, for lack of better terminology. Just if some things fall into place with regard to, like, you know, drafting the right players and maybe some free agency. I mean, Markstrom's a good goalie, so maybe, you know, next year we're sitting here saying, oh, the Calgary Flames are a really good team because of 1 or 2 deals they made. But like, nothing's bad. Like, I mean, nothing. I think the only deal they really would drop would probably be the Lucic deal.
Yeah, off the top of my head, they don't really have any like egregious contracts outside of the Lucic contract.
And that's kind of the world we live in today's NHL, where as long as you don't have bad contracts, you can get good in a hurry. And I've thought about this a lot, because like we've been going in circles with a lot of these teams in the division, whether it's, you know, Calgary today or Vancouver or Montreal, in the way that they all have some night, like all these teams have good players. And I think it's just the cap era we live in, that like nobody really sucks. Like,
that's a good point.
Yeah, like you take away the teams at the very bottom that are kind of like tanking on purpose.
Yeah, like Detroit and Ottawa.
You take away Detroit, like, let's say these are rebuilding teams. Like Buffalo's just a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
But like after that, how many teams are there where it's like you can kind of, you never fully circle a win, and Leafs fans know about that, again with the Senators lately, but where you can kind of circle a win even with a pencil. It's like, no, like no one's absolutely trash, but what you can look at is contracts and say, okay, that team's not trash, but can they get good? Like, do they have that ability to get very good because they're well built financially? And the Flames are in that category, because they have good young players, and there's nothing you really look at besides that one contract that you really and truly want to dump in their salary cap. So like they're in a fair spot, like, and things can turn around in a hurry for them. And I think when we talked about the Sutter thing, yeah, we didn't think it was a good hire, but it was more about the broad scope of it, in the way that like the same guy getting recycled, like, yawn, give me a break. Daryl Sutter coaching in Calgary, shocking. But maybe he can motivate them. Maybe he can get them to play a certain way. And like I said, maybe if some pieces fall into place in seasons to come, the Flames can be a contender in the West if we get a Western Conference again.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen at this point. But yeah, I'm just looking at their salary cap situation right now. And yeah, you nailed it. They really don't have any bad contracts besides the Lucic contract.
How many years does he have left? 2, 3?
He's got 2 years after this year.
At 5?
Yeah, he's coming in at 5.25.
Okay.
And I'm just looking here on Cap Friendly. So you got Lindholm under contract at 4.85 for 3 more years after this season. Backlund at a little over $5 million, which is okay. I mean, maybe you could say that's a little bit of an overpay. Monahan has 2 years after this season at 6.375. Gaudreau has 1 more season at 6.75 before he's a UFA.
He's only got 1 more year?
1 more year after this season, Johnny Gaudreau.
Okay. Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Okay. I thought he was signed longer than that.
So I don't know. Maybe that's a guy that, and there's been rumblings that the Flames are potentially looking to trade Johnny Gaudreau.
Yeah, he's their Nylander. Yeah, he's their Nylander.
Exactly. And when you think about the way that Daryl Sutter likes his teams to play, Johnny Gaudreau just seems like the complete opposite of the type of player that Daryl Sutter, likes to have. But here's the thing. It's like, are you really going to prioritize, your coach over one of your best offensive players? And I don't care that he's, 5'9" and 165 pounds soaking wet. He's still one of your best offensive players. Yeah. And he's one of the main guys who's generating chances and generating offense on your team on a night-to-night basis. Now, has Johnny Gaudreau been great the last 2 seasons? No. Last season, he took a step back after his 99-point season. And this year, he got off to a good start. But right now, I'm just looking at the numbers. Johnny Gaudreau, 24 points in 32 games, 12 goals. I don't think he's happy with that production. So
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a guy they look to move, especially since his contract is coming to an end pretty soon. But it's like you said, Lepore, the Flames are just kind of in that tier where I think a lot of teams are at right now, where it's like they're not great, but they're not bad either. And they're just kind of like middle of the road teams. And on any given night, they can really just beat any team based on sort of the talent that they have. Because it's like we said, it's not like the Flames don't have talent. Like they have good players.
They have a lot of talent. Yeah.
Do they have elite level players who are game changers and game breakers? No, not really. But they have enough talent on this roster to be a playoff team in the Canadian division, at least. Right. So, yeah, this is a team where moving forward, I think they got to find a way to just inject some more high-end talent into the roster, and maybe they use, their salary cap space to do that. Now, when you look at the Flames salary cap space, they don't have much right now, but when you look at some of the guys that are going to come off the book soon or deals they could make, I'm sure it's going to open up a little bit. So they should have some flexibility moving forward. But yeah, I'm right there with you with the Calgary Flames. I'm just not expecting much out of them moving forward. And yeah, maybe they compete for a playoff spot the rest of the season, but I think their days are numbered in 2021, to be honest with you.
They're 4 right as it's now. They're 4 points behind Montreal. Played 1 more game. So
there's
this is going to go to the end, man. You look at it, but Montreal at 4th with 37, as we sit here today. Vancouver at 35, Flames at 33. Vancouver's played a lot of games, though. They've played 35 games. That's 4 more than Montreal, 3 more than Calgary. So that's a lot of games, but it's not over, man. It's going to be a blast at the end, especially, again, we got to look at the calendar, see if these teams are playing each other a lot like that last month of the season. So it'll be good. It'll be good.
Yeah. And it's like you've brought up on previous shows, you're going to have a chance to really get back into the race just based on the way the schedule is set up.
Yeah.
If you're playing, for example, the Flames are essentially chasing the Habs at this point because yes, Vancouver's technically ahead of them, but they've played the most games and Vancouver just mathematically is going to have the most difficult, chance to actually get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Whereas the Flames are really chasing the Habs. So if they have all these games against Montreal coming up, that could switch in an instant.
Well, funny you mentioned that. So next month in April, they have a stretch from April 14th to the 26th where the Flames go Montreal, Montreal, Ottawa, Ottawa, Montreal, Montreal, Montreal.
Wow. So they can do it right there.
Right there. They
That's
play
their
Montreal
season.
5 times and Ottawa in between 2 games. And they're at home for those games against Ottawa too. So that can turn their record on its head and their playoff standings.
And as we've seen, Lepore, with this Canadian division, like things can change really quickly.
Yeah.
Because we thought the Leafs were just going to run away with the division. And I'm sure we both still think the Leafs are going to win the Canadian division. But as we've seen, you could go through a 7-10 game stretch where things just really fall apart. Yep. And with this being a 56 game sprint to the finish, where you're just scrambling for positive things to look at to turn your season around, because things can change in an instant in this division. So it should be very interesting to see how this race plays out the rest of the way. Another thing I wanted to bring up, Lepore, is Austin Matthews.
Yeah.
And he's in a little bit of a slump right now. He hasn't scored in his last 4 games. He has 3 goals over his last 11. Are you concerned at all? And not even just with Matthews, maybe even the play of the top line in general, how they haven't been, producing at the same rate that they were, the first 20 or so games of the season.
It'd be easy for me to say that, I'm not concerned, because, we all know they're great players and they are still getting a lot of chances. But where I am concerned is just the confidence level. Like, you want this team to be going guns a-blazing, and there's a lot of time, like mental timing involved. So when they head into the playoffs, you want that confidence to be sky high, like that feeling of everything I shoot's going in. And we saw the frustration in Matthews breaking the stick on the bench. It was pretty hilarious. Like, these last 2 games, he's getting robbed. He's hitting posts. One thing I didn't know, they said last night he's leading the league in goal posts.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, he's got like 7 or 8 posts, and like it's
wow.
like that's like 1 every 3 games. Like, quick math, like that's a lot of fucking posts. And again, you throw in like the robbery he's getting, so he's got a right to be frustrated. And I expect them to be going in for him, but there's that lurking thing in me that's kind of concerned in the way that you want him to be playing at 100 come playoff time. And again, there's a lot of timing involved, a lot of bullshit involved. So slightly, not overly concerned, slightly concerned. He might score 5 goals this week, and I'm completely going the other way. As for the top line in general, what I have been very happy with, even though it's not full on showing on the score sheet, is that Marner's been shooting a lot more. Like, someone brought up something along the lines of, like, in 4 of his last 5 games, he had 5 shots on goal. And like, there were times where I just wanted to like put my hands on Marner's shoulders, slam him down into a chair and say, Mitch, shoot the fucking puck. But apparently he's heard it from somewhere, because he is shooting more. His goal last night was a great goal. Or sorry, his goal in the previous game against Calgary that tied the game at 3. It was a nice shot. He beat the goalie top corner. So he doesn't have the greatest shot in the world, but he's shown that he can score. But the stuff with the top line kind of ties into what we talked about before, in the way that like things were just going to adjust. Like, they weren't going to go, Gretzky and Lemieux over the entire season. But concerned, yes. Overly concerned, no. To me, it's just a matter of confidence. You hope these guys have high levels of confidence when it really matters.
I'll tell you the one thing that's slightly concerning about the top line, and I think it's that Sheldon Keefe has yet to solidify who that third guy is going to be, because we saw Thornton start the season on the top line, and, we said from the get-go, like, that is just not going to work. And we've seen that come to fruition, because Thornton has been demoted the last little while, and he just doesn't look very good. And we've seen Zach Hyman on the top line, and we know that Zach Hyman is a fantastic option on that line, but we also know that Keefe likes to play him a little bit lower down the lineup to create some more depth, have him on that third line with Pierre Engvall and Ilya Mikheyev. So now we've recently seen Wayne Simmons get a chance on that first line. So I'm a little bit concerned. And listen, I'm not concerned about Matthews and Marner. I think they're going to be fine. Matthews is the best goal scorer in the league. Marner's one of the best playmakers in the league. They're both elite. But as we get closer and closer to the playoffs, I would like to see that first line get solidified at one point. I'd like Sheldon Keefe to be like, this is our first line. This is the third guy. And this is what we're rolling with. And sure, Do you need to be flexible, in a playoff series and on a game-to-game basis? Yes, of course you do, because as we saw under Mike Babcock, that dude had like zero flexibility. It was his way or the highway. Whereas with Sheldon Keefe, you're seeing like he's willing to try out a bunch of different things, and he'll make adjustments in game. He makes adjustments game to game. He's not afraid to do any of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, he went crazy last night. Like going into the game, the lines were a complete whack job compared to the night before.
Oh yeah, big time. But I think even he is a little bit frustrated at this point with like, man, oh man, who is the third guy on this top line? Yeah. Because I think it's really important. And sure, are Matthews and Martin going to produce sort of regardless of who's on the line? Yeah, probably. But when you're getting into a playoff series and we're getting into the home stretch of the season, I would like to see them solidify that at some point. And I don't know if it's Wayne Simmons. I don't think it's Wayne Simmons, to be honest with you, based on what I've seen recently with him with those guys. But what's your take on that? Are you concerned with that at all?
I think what's going to end up happening, and this is like my crystal ball, I think it's going to end up being Hyman, and the third guy for the second line with Nylander and Tavares is going to be whoever they pick up. Like, I think that's their circled thing of we need this at the deadline, a third guy. And then who knows, maybe Hyman moves to the second line, and then whoever they pick up moves up to Matthews and Marner. But that's just how I see it. But I'm with you.
That's a really good way to look at it, actually.
Yeah, like, because I just look at it and I'm like, I guess I'm just thinking what you are in the way that it has to be established by the time they get to the playoffs. And I just think, and even too, with the type of guy you get at the deadline, like, you always hear the big names and you go back and you see like, oh, when Kovalchuk was picked up, and like I remember like Hossa at the deadline, and like rumors when Sundin at the deadline, he didn't get traded, but like where he was going to go. It never seems to be that team that picks up that like number one player, like that big splash guy at the deadline. It's always like a nice depth piece or that third guy to put with skilled players. Because let's face it too, in today's era, like with what you're willing to trade, so what you'll have to trade to get like a 5-star player, like people are bringing up Taylor Hall, and like however the numbers would work and like what we'd have to move out, it'd be insanity. It'd be a big deal. But are you willing to give that up? But maybe, okay, you can trade away like a second or a prospect to get a nice player, like a nice player that you can insert with Nylander and Tavares or Matthews and Marner, and then Hyman goes where that guy does not. And then you have a top six. And then in your bottom six, you have Simmons, you have wherever you want to put Thornton, Spezza, Robertson's coming back. I mean, and the list of hundreds of forwards that the Toronto Maple Leafs currently have.
Yeah, they have a lot of
They have a lot of forwards. So yeah, like that's just where I see it going. And that's kind of been my prediction all year. But I mean, we'll see if it happens. But I'm with you in the way that this has to get nailed down.
Yeah, no, totally. And yeah, I don't think they're gonna go after like a star forward.
Yeah, it's not gonna
at
happen
the deadline, but it's like you said, I think they're very much in play to go after like a depth forward who can play in the top six. And I know the rumors have been swirling about this happening for the last few weeks, and that will probably solidify things once that does happen. So, I guess Leaf fans, we just need to be patient, because I'm sure this is all going to sort itself out at some point before the April 12th NHL trade deadline. But Lepore, before we wrap this thing up, just looking ahead to next week, and the Leafs only play 2 games again. They got the Senators on Thursday. And then
what are we going to do with ourselves? Like, oh my God, I'm getting bored at night, man.
I don't know. Look at this. 4 games over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I have to watch other teams or something.
What's going on here? But yeah, man. So what are you expecting to see out of the Leafs next week against the Senators and the Oilers?
Okay, well, this team better not take the Ottawa Senators lightly, because we've already seen that happen a couple times this year. So let's get a W, boys. Coming off a win, Campbell played well. Let's get a W. Like, come on. I know it's easy to say, but we've seen this team take the Senators. The Senators have 3 wins on us, man. Not good. Like, that's verge of embarrassing. And you can say that's an insult to the Sens. Fine, call it that. But this team is losing points to the worst team in the division, standings wise. And then you look at it, man. The Oilers are essentially 500 minus their wins against the Sens. Like, they have they're 7-0-0 against Ottawa. it's like that can come into play at the end of the year very easily. And we talked about that, I think, on our first or second show.
First
that we
show
may
of
look at this
of the season.
We said like whoever beats up on in any division, whoever beats up on the bad teams may finish almost higher than they're supposed to, because like you take those teams lightly. But I'll be pretty fucking rattled if at the end of the year the Leafs don't have home ice advantage because they went 500 against the Sens and because other teams just beat up on them. Like there's no excuse for that. So I'm looking for a good effort. I'm looking for a very, very, very good effort. And then moving forward to the Oilers, we're going to be playing against a team that we're battling with for top of the division. So you circle the Ottawa game as a team that beat us recently. You circle the Oilers game as a team we're racing with. There's no excuse not to be motivated and to put forward a good effort.
And you said it with the Senators, Lepore. I mean, like, what the fuck is going on when the Leafs play the Senators? Like, how are they not just dominating this team?
It's so bad. Like, and you always see it coming. Like, that's the thing. It's like 5 minutes in, it's like, this isn't going to be easy. Like, you just know. Oh my God.
It's like, do they just go into it like asleep and are they just chalking up a win before the game even starts?
Fuck me.
Like, what else could it be? Like, it's crazy. And you said it, man. Honestly, it could get to a point where the team that dominates Ottawa the most might win the division. Because if the Leafs keep screwing around and they're like, one game over 500 against Ottawa, and, then you have the Oilers who are just destroying the Senators.
Them. Yeah.
It's funny because Connor McDavid, right, gets completely shut out against the Leafs over those 3 games and then rolls into Ottawa and rolls into Winnipeg and Vancouver.
Just
and
makes up for lost time.
And just absolutely goes ham on these teams. So, yeah, that's a team the Leafs just cannot afford to screw with starting next week to the end of the season. Just beat that team, get your 2 points, and get the hell out of there. And then, with the Edmonton Oilers, I'm still not overly concerned about that team. We all know what the recipe is to beat that team. You somehow try to contain McDavid and Draisaitl, and you're probably going to win. And sure, am I a little bit, concerned when those guys are on the ice and they're playing well? Yeah, of course, because they can put the team on their back at any moment. But that's another team that the Leafs honestly should beat more times than not. And it's going to come down to the Leafs, Oilers, and Jets for this division. So those games against either of those 2 teams are going to be obviously very, very important. So should be a very interesting week for the Leafs, because I'm sure we're going to see Campbell on Thursday night against the Senators. And then if he plays well against Ottawa and gets another win, we're probably going to see Campbell against the Oilers.
Yeah.
So it should be a very interesting week in Leafland, starting with that Senators game. And I can't wait, man. So any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
I just hope I'm worried about this goaltending thing, man. I'm worried about it. It's that circle thing of like that Leafs anxiety that we've talked about before, in the way that the last year where the Leafs had it all, but couldn't figure out goaltending. And that's lurking in me. And maybe that's just being a fan and there's always something to worry about, but that's what I got on my mind right now.
And Lepore, wouldn't it be a shame where this year it's all lined up? They're in the Canadian division. They don't have to play Boston or Tampa. Matthews is scoring at an unbelievable pace. Marner's been amazing. Spezza, rejuvenated, playing the best hockey we've seen in the last few years. And then it all comes crumbling down because of the friggin' goaltending.
Hashtag Leafs.
Like, that is the most hashtag Leafs thing ever, if that does happen. But let's hope it doesn't happen, Michael Lepore.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
All right, everybody. That is going to do it for this episode of the Gluttons for Punishment podcast. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. If you're listening to us on Apple, Google, or Spotify, we would really appreciate it if you go on there and give us a 5-star rating and review. And then, of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, do us a big time favor, hammer that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is dropping some new content. So that's going to do it for this episode. For Michael Lepore, I'm Anthony Bruno, and we will see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.
Son máquinas, el flow.